Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, November 4th, 2020, and we are in the Freeport High School cafeteria. All of our board members are with us this evening, and we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we don't have any minutes from last week yet. We don't have any adjustments, correct?
No.
Okay, so we will move right on to good news and recognition and start with the report from our board student rep, Liam.
Okay, so nothing much has happened since last week, but I quickly wanted to repeat that the Freeport Running Boosters are putting on a fundraiser for the cross-country team, indoor track and field team, and the outdoor track and field team, and they're selling Freeport masks in both youth and adult sizes. So Freeport High School has been offering, or is now offering, the Writing Center again, a space for students to get help with English assignments, as well as learning how to annotate, understand a text, brainstorm, etc. And the center is now also open for online or remote students through Google Meets. So RSU 5 Performing Arts Boosters is asking for support and help for coming up for or with creative ways to fundraise and support performing arts teachers and students during the pandemic, and there will be a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. And the guidance department has been sending out a lot of college newsletters with advice, calendars, deadlines, and general support with the college applications process, which has been pretty helpful. I wanted to mention for Mass Landing, there will be a family math night on November 19th, and for Durham Community School there was a book fair that ended on November 1st, so a few days ago. And fall sports are coming to a close, but the Falcons, or football, they won the final at Freeport over Brunswick 49-27 on October 30th, and I also saw that they beat Mount Ararat 42-8. And boys varsity soccer, I was corrected, they're not playing today, so yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to good news from Freeport Middle School. Principal Grogan.
Ray Grogan, middle school principal. The first start of the good news about Freeport Middle School is we are almost done all of our NWA testing. It's a little bit like the election results. They're slowly coming in. We were scheduled to do them the first 2 weeks of October. But that's when Freeport Middle School went red for that time, and now it's just we've done just about all the kids, but still not all students are in school every day, and some students are still remote, so we're still getting the last few kids through. But overall, we were very happy with our results, knowing that the last third of the year, which is really the best learning part of the year, we were in remote. The numbers that we have looking at the students that were at a similar percentage 2 years ago in the spring to this year now, because that's the data we have, because we have no 1920, and we looked at that the same way that Mass Landing and Pownell looked at it, just to keep it consistent through all the schools. And we had 67% of our students in math make their goals, and 61% of their students in reading make their goals. So we were very pleased with the data coming out of remote learning in the spring. And I'll transition that into the next thing we're really pleased about at Freeport Middle School is where synchronous learning is, because synchronous teaching is not easy. Our teachers, have the great skills to teach kids in the classroom, and they also, have that skills to teach the kids remotely. But combining the two together is a lot easier said than done. It's a really unique science to be able to effectively communicate with the kids right in front of you and the kids that are at home at the same time. And that's something that in August and September, the additional days that we got We didn't spend any time on that whatsoever. We needed all of that time to get ready for yellow. So once we got ready for yellow and had the kids back in the building, that's when we started to focus on, what is synchronous learning going to look for us. And then after Indigenous Peoples Day is when we really did go fully synchronous. We had tried, to had several classes up and running before that, but we spent that professional time really working to get the technology in all the classrooms and the teachers ready for it. And what synchronous learning really looks like at Freeport Middle School is some classes will have a full classroom, a full discussion. They'll have an owl in the middle where the kids are talking and all part of it. They'll have kids interacting with home kids and they'll stay as part of the lab or the discussion for the entire class. Other class, it might just be on for the direct instruction part. They get the mini lesson, they get asked if they had any questions, they get started on their work, and then they go work independently. Other synchronous classes might be that what they're doing in the classroom and what they're doing at home is different. And the teacher, will have posted the work on Google Classroom, but start with all the kids together and make sure those kids understand what that expectation is, and then those kids will go off there. Or there are some days when there is not synchronous instruction because they're outside learning. They're doing something different. Like when our 7th grade went down to Wolf's Neck, or to Winslow Park. There was no synchronous learning those days. Or if the teacher's just out sick, there's obviously not that. So that's really kind of a quick snapshot of what synchronous learning looks like, and you're really proud of where we have gotten in, really through the month of October with that, with Freeport Middle School. And then I did mention, we still did get out and do some field work with Winslow Park. Last year, Elaine Dupre came and presented to you about the clamming project that we were doing with the local clammers and scientists. So last year they embedded some clam boxes in there. So this, a few weeks ago, they went and pulled 48 of those boxes out of the mud at Winslow Park, and they were at different tidal zones. And now they have taken those out, and they're at a freezer at Freeport Middle School. And now we're going to go through and see kind of what they look like at each different tidal zone. And while they were down there also, they had some other groups where they looked at the pH balances of the water and also did some work around the green crabs that are invasive there as well. So even with COVID, we are still able to get out a little bit and do some field work with the kids. And then the last part is clubs and activities have started at Freeport Middle School. We did run all of our fall sports. None of them looked the same with that. We did not play games against other teams, and we did practice every day, but the kids only practiced with the kids that they were in school with. We just felt it was too much to have parents come back for a 2:30 practice with that, so we didn't have a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team. We had an A-day team and a B-day team. We are starting basketball now, and what we have decided to do was push up the season, and we are outside after school, and we're going to do it November and December. So we started about 3 weeks early, and the season will probably end up being about a week or two shorter. But we really felt like our best chance of getting a basketball season in was outside before the snow came with that. And that is a quick update on Freeport Middle School. Okay.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
Do you have a question from Valley?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. Quick question. Can you describe what kind of feedback you're getting from teachers when they're doing the remote synchronous and in the classroom? How do the teachers handle the multitasking that comes along with having kids in front of them on the screen?
I think it's definitely harder for everyone to multitask exactly with that. We've really worked very hard to do as best we can to get the right technology in front of them. Most teachers will have kind of one screen that will be their direct instruction lesson, another screen that has their kids on it too, so they're not toggling back and forth on their screen. And I think that really is the science of that is, how do you balance that feedback for both groups with that. So I think that is, really the learning and improving that we're trying to get to, because, I mean, it's such a different world to try to manage both those at the same time.
And then do the teachers choose themselves what degree of synchronous teaching to do? Or are some who always choose to do just the tutorial or the lesson in the beginning and
So
then?
we've really kind of left that up to the teams, because we want to have a balance within the team. We don't want one team that has kids on for 6 hours and one team that has them on for 30 minutes. So we're really, the teams have done a nice job of making sure that, okay, so language arts and math are looking this way and social studies is looking a different way. So like that's what, and when we did our last survey with parents, we had, the question was, are your kids, how do you feel about, how much synchronous they have? 55% said they liked the amount, 25% said they too much, and 20 said not enough. So it kind of made me feel like we're probably right in the middle, where we should be, and that's something that, we're looking for feedback from parents and kids on that.
Okay, so we will move on to 7 on our agenda, which is the first public comment period of the evening. And I don't think we have anybody in person to speak tonight. So if you are joining us via the Zoom, you have the ability to raise your hand there, and Maura will walk us through that process. I don't know, do we have folks on?
I don't see anyone attending on the Zoom at the moment.
So there will be another public comment at the end of our agenda this evening. So if we do have folks that are listening to the live stream and are interested in sharing any thoughts, the Zoom link is on the rsu5.org site as well as the agenda, and you can hop on there and participate in that second public comment period. Report from the superintendent? No. Moving, right? Okay, then we'll move, hopefully Ray didn't go too far because now it's time for his goal review.
Now normally there's a good little break before that and you can kind of review your notes before you come up the second time. So the Freeport Middle School goals, I'll start with the 1920 goals, where we had a language arts goal and a math goal. And the language arts goal was really around the analytical reading and writing skills and really focusing on that through discourse, where we had the literacy strategy to work with our teachers with that. And she did do a very good job working with our teachers on that. The goal was going to be measured by the MEA, because the MEA really breaks it down to that specific level, and we kind of developed the goal based on where we saw a little bit of a hole in our MEA scores. And unfortunately, the MEA was not given this spring, so we don't have the direct, data to see, how well we hit that or not. When we look at our NWEA data, we were at 61% making their goals, and on the NWEA, they say successful teaching is somewhere between 40 and 60, and we were above that. But it really doesn't get into the depth or the, into it to the level that we were looking for from the MEA. So it's not completely relevant data to say, hey, you made your goal because of that data with that. And then the math goal, we were really looking to, get all the teachers doing all the chapters and doing all the activities and hands-on activities that go with every chapter. And when we looked at, we wanted to get every teacher to have a coaching cycle with our coach, which they did do. We wanted them to unpack and do all of the exploration units, which we really only did in chapters 1 through 6. Chapters 7 through 10, we had to make some curriculum decisions to get through chapters 7, 8, 9, and 10. And in remote learning, what we did end up dropping was the activities that go with the lessons and just did the more traditional direct lesson, and the kids did the work that matched that with that. And then the MEA scores were one of the measurement tools with that, and we don't obviously have the MEA scores. And then the other measurement was 67% of the students reached their math goal, and we were literally right on that. For the building. There's still a little more data to come. 2 of the grade levels were over 70, and 1 was at 54%. And there's still some more data to come through, especially for our 8th graders there. So that'll change a little bit. But we were very pleased with how chapters 1 through 6 went with the Big Ideas Math and unpacking that. And we did feel it was important to condense down the chapters to, as opposed to doing 7 and 8 completely, we wanted to hit 7, 8, and 9 and 10, but take some of this information out of it for the students. Any questions on last year's goals? For this year, our building has 2 goals. The first says to create and to begin to implement a plan or a pathway for current and future practice at Freeport Middle School to support and improve equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this is something we've talked about as a building, and we know that most of the action steps and strategies really will, we're hoping will come out of the equity audit and telling us what direction and some things that we need to work on and improve on. Things that we're working on now are looking at classroom libraries and different resources and materials we have. And then also, all the staff, taking part in a book group that's focused on diversity and equality, and based on, how we do K-8 in all of our book choices. Teachers have voice and choice in the books they were given, and forming book groups right now as we speak. And we're really hoping that the evidence and effectiveness for this goal, that will come from, the equity audit will tell us, what measurements we can have to, make us feel like we're going in the right direction with that. So this is, a broad goal, but we'll get more specifics once we see the equity audit. And then the second goal is the technology abilities and skills to be able to teach full-time and synchronous in red or yellow to allow the at-home students to the daily required live classroom time so they can progress through the school year. And we're technically there, but we're practically, there's always so much room to grow, and that's really where we're focusing. At first, we really focused on, what are the nuts and bolts to make this working so kids can be at home and learning like they're at school. And now the next part is, how do we make that kid feel more like they're part of the regular classroom? Because it's very easy in synchronous learning and red learning to fall back to that lecture type of model, and we were so good to be so far away from that a year ago, and that's the easiest model to step into this, and really looking at how do we keep it to a mini lessons, how do we get kids interacting, and I think with a lot of those things it's going to be a continued work in progress as the year goes along. And that's really the last line in that goal under actions. Continue to revise and improve is going to be the key this year, and that's where we will look for constant feedback from parents and students. The parents have already been reached out to twice, and same with the students since beginning of October. So we're really looking for that, and trying to figure out how to make it better as the year goes along.
Valley.
Sorry to keep asking questions.
Oh, that's good.
Very interesting topic. So about this synchronous, are you seeing that there are problems with attendance for the remote students?
I mean, it's not as good as the in person, but it's it's going pretty well, I would say. It's more the same small group of kids that we're really struggling to get connected, and some of those kids we are inviting back 5 days a week, or some other things, but it's more of a smaller group that are more consistently not engaging, as opposed to the one-off here and the one-off there. Like when I walk around and, peek my head into a monitor, you see a classroom, full of kids, but I mean, it's definitely an issue, but it's not a major, that is going better than we had anticipated. We thought that would be a bigger issue coming in. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a non-issue, but it's better than we anticipated.
So short of bringing them into the school 5 days a week, say if you didn't have the capacity to do that, what other methods would you use to try to engage the students when they're home?
So, I mean, we would reach out to the parents, have those conversations, the teachers would. There's RTI services where we would set them up with a smaller group to see what those issues are. It's more, it's more setting up the meeting and finding out what the barrier is, because the barrier is different for all kids with it. And there are some parents that are just like, my kid's not doing this, which makes it very difficult, because they are missing instruction that makes it harder for them to come back the next day.
Maddie.
Thanks, Ray. I don't know that you'll have an answer necessarily, because it's not going to be a clear question, but more what I'm thinking, and foreshadowing probably the conversation to come and our next meeting. But reading the teacher survey feedback that we got, it's clear that the synchronous learning has felt like pressure, and I'm one of those board members that really wanted us to move forward on this, because I wanted us to be prepared for remote instruction, and I wanted us to get our technical capabilities ready and our teaching skills in that kind of a model. But we're also seeing this, sorry this is rambling, but this lack of planning time. And I'm thinking about, three concepts: connecting with kids, synchronous learning, and instructional time. And I think, we haven't defined those all very clearly, but I feel like if we were going to try to do that, connecting with kids would be, I feel, the thing we care about the most. Because connecting with kids is how you find out if the instructional time is effective for each individual kid, and if the synchronous learning is effective for an individual kid. And I'm just wondering if, in our efforts to make sure we're ready for a remote option, if we've pushed a model at the expense of the quality time that a teacher could potentially connect with a kid during a prep time or plan time. So I guess I'm just sort of asking you to be thoughtful about that, maybe not now, but maybe late. That's the kind of thing I'm hoping to learn more about from you and your colleagues. How can we be more thoughtful about how we're teaching our kids during these really strange times with those three concepts?
Well, and I think, when you talk about like that connecting with kids, that's the key that makes learning possible. If you don't connect with a kid, they're not going to learn no matter what you say to them. And, it is harder in this environment. It's harder synchronously. It's harder with masks. They can't see your facial expressions back and forth, staying 6 feet away. I mean, all of that is harder. And I think that is, when we talk about the stresses on teachers, that's, that connection's harder to get, and it's harder for the kids to feel it. I think when you talk about stresses on teachers, it is real, and that's why I'm really happy with where we are right now, because I think you're exactly right. It's not easy, and there is pressures on that with that. But I think it's definitely something that always has to be considered moving forward.
Jen.
So my question is, well, first of all, I think the goals are great. They both, are right on target with what we've been talking about. With the synchronous learning, I guess where does it look like, where does this fit in? Like how, with the teachers share and collaborate, like where does that time come from? Like,
So-
do you have like allotted time?
So I'll just take you through our 6th grade teacher and kids schedule. In the 6th grade, so the 6th grade teachers, at 7:40, they have advisory with their group. And so they'll have their advisory, and then that's from 7:40 to 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, all of those kids go to their special. And then, so that 8 to 9 o'clock is that time where teachers will collaborate. They'll plan around students. They'll meet with, with myself, with them, and talk about whatever we're talking about curriculum wise or kids or with that. So that time for that, and every team has an hour a day of that. And then at 9 o'clock, all the 6th graders will come back from their special, and they'll go to their social studies, STEM, language arts, or math. And all of those teachers will welcome those kids into the classroom, and all the at-home kids in their Google Classroom have the link to that 9 o'clock class, and they're logging in at the same time and getting that same math lesson that everyone else is getting. So then that teacher will do the math mini lesson. So like in that grade, I think the math and the language arts, they're getting the mini lesson. They're sticking around for as long as they need to. In social studies, it's a little, some days it's like that, and some days it's a quicker check-in. In STEM, a lot of times they're staying a lot of the class and doing part of the activity because it's a coding program that they're working on right now, and that fits great synchronously. So those kids will stay around longer than at 10 o'clock, all those kids, the math kids go to language arts, the language arts kids go to science, and they just kind of move around. And that's what the rest of the day kind of looks like for the kids.
So I guess what I wasn't super clear, because I was kind of asking more about like, where does the time come for this goal, like the technology goal? Because it seems like that would be a lot of time needed to like meet with, and I know that there's already not a ton of time. So is there like, is that PLD? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think
that's how it's going to go.
I think you're right. Where is that time going to come from? I think a lot of it is that, for each team during that team time, it is, during the staff time, on Wednesdays after school, that we would dedicate to that. And I think that we're very lucky the amount of time that teachers put in, outside of their, contracted day to be ready to do this.
Yeah.
I think, and it's really those 3 buckets where that's coming from.
Thank you.
So a follow-up question, right? The Wednesday after school, how long is that block?
So by the contract with the teachers is 36 hours that we schedule throughout the school year. So like we've just had a whole bunch, but now we're getting into parent-teacher conference season at our school. So we don't have another one for a bit now because we're not going to, we're trying to make it a little more manageable for teachers during this time. But yeah, so that's a 36-hour time frame that we have. And, back in October, that and the PLD days in September was really focused around synchronous. And, I think when you talk about like, where's that time come from? That's a legitimate question because, like the PLC book groups and stuff, other things around the equity is dipping into that same bucket of time. And that bucket's not as deep as any of us would like.
I think I just want to say that I appreciate these goals specifically, because I think, one of the things we saw in the feedback, and I've been worried about as we've moved through this year, is, it's a lot, right? I mean, you've said it. Teaching synchronously is a lot. Dealing with kids at home and in the classroom is a lot. Everyone's got their own stuff on their plate, outside of school. And so to acknowledge that, one of our goals is to get better at one of these things, the synchronous learning piece, as opposed to also, right? We could have put a different goal in here around math or whatever we typically use for our goals. I like that we're acknowledging that this is a lift for them, and that's our goal for this year. It's like we know it's hard, and we want you to get better, and we want to help you with those tools, and it's not a also. It's a this is what we're focusing on. So I appreciate you putting that in there. Susanna.
Thank you, Rai. I just have a quick clarification question. You had spoken about the teacher planning time, and I know we've all heard from teachers about the how planning for them is taking significantly longer this year. And I'm just wondering, in an average day, or perhaps maybe a week, if certain days are different, what the change in planning time or available time teachers have during the day. And you mentioned, if you can quantify that, you mentioned that there's the specials, but then we're also hearing from teachers that they don't have lunch time anymore. And I was just wondering if you can sort of quantify an approximation of the time this year versus the time last year.
So I think when I first started thinking about this in the summer, I was thinking that kind of planning for the in-school day, the at-home day, and figuring that out, that, okay, we're talking twice as much. I think that the reality of it is that I underestimated what it really is, even though it really is. You got the home kids, you got this kids, and you're kind of just combining it. Because it's so new and what's asked of, and, the teachers with that it's more than twice what they were prepping for before at the middle school level. And that's probably, and I'll probably take some criticism for saying it's only more than twice, when I go back to school, with that, because I think it's considerably more, because then when you get groups that go at different paces, then you have this group that's here, this group that's here, this group that's here. So then you're doing 3 or 4 different preps on the same lesson. It's definitely, it's definitely been a lot, at home, and just seeing what my wife's putting into her first grade,
Right.
The same thing. It's not, I don't think it's isolated to middle school.
No.
I think that, Moore Street and Mass Landing, would say the same thing.
Thank you.
But our teachers do have lunch.
Okay, because and I don't remember, there was comments in here about some teachers saying that they're doing other things during lunchtime where they don't have, that time is no longer time that they feel they can guarantee for their own
I would
planning.
say yes, teachers are always doing something during lunch to get ready for the next class. But,
Right, yeah, there's
but
just
yeah,
stuff that comparative
Yeah.
to what they had
Yeah.
before,
yeah,
that time seems taken away too, so,
yeah.
thank you.
I saw you grabbing your mic. You just preparing it for later?
Right. Everyone is getting their contractual lunchtime, are they not?
That is correct. Yes, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was just wondering about the ability to use that time for planning. There were comments that we received about how they're getting lunch, but it's time where they might be with students, or they might be doing something that means that it's no longer time to themselves.
I mean, there's absolutely teachers at every level that give up their lunches voluntarily to work with students to help them with the needs they have. I mean, that's a common thing before this, and just even harder now because time is that much more precious. But teachers definitely, if a student needs that, on their own, will do that.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to know
Yeah.
approximately what the time is during the day that teachers have. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, besides saying it's quite a bit more responsibilities and prep, I'm not sure how I would quantify it with that, but they definitely have the prep and the lunch times in there, but I think it's definitely, a lot of teachers are going, well over that to be ready for their classes.
thank you, Rai.
Maddie. Oh, jeez.
Similar to what Michelle said earlier, I really appreciate how relevant these goals are, given what a strange year it is. I've been toying with the idea that we should have no goals other than just making sure everybody's healthy and well this year. But then I thought about, we're going through this equity audit, this diversity and inclusion and equity audit, which is really important for our social emotional wellness as well. But the word thoughtfully keeps occurring to me in like all of this. So when I see fall 2020 on the timeline, that makes me a little nervous. I'm wondering if these, like I would not advocate for getting rid of any goals related to that ongoing audit.
Well, so this was typed up in the summer.
Okay.
That clearly should have been, that was the ambitious goal in
Great.
August. We didn't make that.
Good. Well, that's my hope, is that can we, because these kinds of goals are not check the box goals. They are how do you meaningfully evolve culture to be more inclusive. So I just want to make sure that you're thoughtful about that, and it's not like everybody has to be in a book club once a week.
And I think that, like, when you talk about the wellness, Phyllis Latham, our guidance counselor, really does a great job when we're together in teams or together, with staff, to say, we're in a pandemic. We have to remember that. We have to focus on that. Like, she really does a good job of, reeling myself in or someone else in that, starts to, focus, too much to that, we got to focus on the wellness. She does a really good job of reeling us in as needed.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, community programs. Peter Wagner.
Good evening. We can take a quick look at the 2019-2020 goals from last November. I'll just go ahead and say that, state the obvious, that our programmatic year took a left turn in March, and didn't just interrupt progress toward some of these goals, but really has just sort of changed fundamentally the way we're trying to do business right now. And we're looking to rebuild, and optimistic about the coming months. For the previous year, the first goal that we had set forth was community programs becoming a model of smart and effective communications. We did make some good progress in the ways that we had intended to take those strides. We did do an audit of all of our existing communications and the means by which we communicate. One of the pieces of that goal that I would have to admit that I was maybe a little too ambitious was the second one of tracking inquiries that we received from the public, basically at a phone-by-phone level within our office. Even before March, that turned out to be really much more of a challenge than I probably should have seen that one coming. It's just really hard to make a note of every question that you receive and then move on and actually do the work that's required sometimes to satisfy those requests and questions. So that was incomplete, and then of course, the last quarter of the year, we just didn't receive phone calls. But I think we learned a little bit there about the sorts of questions that people typically have about our programs, and I think it validated what we believed were some of the weak spots in our communication chain. So we have been working on creating communications templates for all of our programs, how we communicate with people before, during, and after the programs in which they're taking part. We absolutely have taken some of the things that we've learned, and we've enabled and empowered all of our instructors and coaches to take a little more ownership of the communication between themselves and the people in their programs. Oftentimes we would find ourselves in between conversations that really should have been between parents and coaches, or students and instructors, and so that has been a helpful change toward that goal. And then the last action strategy E, comparing before and after inquiries. Again, I think that B was a little bit too ambitious to start with, and then we just we lost all traction in March, and so E is more or less incomplete. But the bottom line that I'm taking away from this exercise is that we are continuing to try to be better with our communications. I think we are continuing to be better, and so overall it is a net positive, even though it was more or less incomplete for the year. The next goal that we had set forth, excuse me, community programs becoming a magnet for those seeking enrichment opportunities and a hub for lifelong learning activities. So these goals were put forth in November, and 2 months later we lost our adult education coordinator position, which remained vacant until the summertime, and then March came along, and so again the progress toward this goal kind of screeched to a halt. But we did manage to have an audit of all of our enrichment programs from the last few years. We did a survey for those participants to get their feedback as much as we could, and pretty good response rate. That exercise has informed, or at least began to inform, the program that we were going to have for the coming year. Again, of course, March came, and our program has to be different. Early signs since August and September, when we tried to jump back into adult enrichment programming, is that a lot of folks just aren't ready to come back to us like they had in February and March, and before the world changed. So we have had some classes that have gone off as scheduled. We've had a number of them that we had planned and we had to scratch, but we're trying to bring them forward for the coming year and this winter. I'm hopeful that most of you and most of the community received this new and sort of differently sized catalog in their mailboxes today. If you don't have, well, yeah, you have it on your desktop here. I think that there's also a pretty significant part of our population here in the community that needs this sort of document. They need to have it in their hands and to be able to peruse it and think about it, and that just the online, the virtual communication, which is more or less where we've been for the last 6 or 8 months, this works a lot better for them. So we're hopeful that our adult programming is going to look really good in the winter, and that we'll start to rebuild, get back to where we were before March 15th. The third goal for last year, community programs will be regarded as a thriving recreational engine for youth and adults. Again, we through many of the same sort of surveying tools and looking back at past programs and gathering input, I think we were making some pretty good progress toward that goal. And then everything in the springtime, which would have really been the sweet spot for adult recreational activities, that just got scratched. So again, incomplete on this goal, but as I'll share with you when we get to this coming year's goals, the coronavirus taketh away, and it also gives every now and then. So with the coronavirus relief funds, we have an opportunity to really build our recreation program, and I'll get to that for the coming year's goals. But just looking back at the previous year, are there any questions or comments or feedback, anything that I can talk to you all about?
Thank you, Peter. Not a question, but just feedback. I just wanted to say I think it was great that you were able to continue the summer programs and that obviously adhere to safety protocols. There weren't any issues, and I think that's great that you were able to continue offering that to the community.
Thank you. Yeah, this summer was interesting. It was really exciting, and it was really gratifying. We did run almost all the programs that we had intended to run for the summertime, starting in mid-June, and I saw many of you at these programs and at the health checks in the morning. I was out here in the bus loop at Freeport High School every morning doing health checks for campers and participants, And Leah Campbell, our childhood education coordinator, was doing the same thing at a health check station over at Mass Landing School. And every day, even if there were people that we had seen 3 times that week or people that we had seen for 4 consecutive weeks, so many people just expressed to us that they were super thankful that we were doing something that their kids really were benefiting from it, and that just having the children out of the house and re-engaging in a safe and structured way was a real happy thing for them and their families. So it was, again, it was gratifying to have that direct feedback each day, and people had a really good spirit about it. We didn't have any issues with people becoming ill, which was great. And I thought that one of the really cool signs also that people were taking it seriously is the number of folks who said, you know, I'm not sure, but this is happening in our house, or you know, we're seeing this, so we're going to take our child out of the camp for a couple of days. We're going to get tested, and all of those occasions came back negative, which is great. But it just demonstrated to me that people were taking it seriously, and that we had built a level of trust with those health checks to make it happen. And yeah, so I'm really proud of what we did this summer. So thank you for calling that out.
Jeremy.
Yep, definitely agree with Maura. Just it was so impressive that the programs went so well, and it was just made it so easy in those mornings during drop-offs.
Great, good.
Just a question on the adult education side.
Mm-hmm.
I know in the past some of the cooking programs have been very popular and stuff. Have those been attempted virtually to see if you can catch your own kitchen on fire and things like that? So.
Right. Yeah, there's you'll see in this book and coming up in the months ahead that that we have made some adjustments in those sorts of classes, and there's actually some canned content. So there are very much like the schools are doing, there are synchronous and asynchronous opportunities. So we are sort of buying contact packages from people like Chris Toy, who has a huge following with his cooking classes, and we're able to then hold on to that content, and when someone registers for an asynchronous opportunity, we can send the link for it, and people can take part in that way. So yeah, we have been able to make some adjustments like that. There's some programs that a lot of programs are best when they're done in person, and we're doing that in the places where instructors are comfortable doing so, and then we'll let the community sort of sound off on whether they're ready to do it in those ways. But where we've been able to adapt virtually, we're trying to do that as well. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's look ahead to this coming year. I've set forth 2 goals here. One is specific to adult education, both as it pertains to Freeport High School students who we can serve in some different ways, and also to enrichment programming. So the goal is, as stated, is adult education will achieve measurable growth in adult participants, and will add at least 2 services to those available to high school aged learners. So this is step 1 toward rebuilding the adult enrichment programming, and we're looking to re-engage as many people as possible. Hopefully convincing them that there are some opportunities that they can come back to safely, and get back on that enrichment trail. In regard to high school students, over the summer, we were, I believe I've reported this at another point, but we were very, very fortunate to hire Katie Bezier as our new adult education coordinator. She is an absolute superstar, and she has experience with LearningWorks based out of Portland, and they have a program called Youth Build Alternatives. That is one program that we are hoping to introduce to the Dropout Prevention Committee at next week's meeting, and have YBA do a presentation there. So it is it's a program where it's a little more structured. It sort of adds some expertise and opportunities to what we can offer high school students who are in need of a little bit of additional support. Gets them on course for some job and life skills, working with their hands as well, and also it's coupled with the High Set program. So we're excited about that possibility, and adding that to our bag of tricks and the things that we can offer. what we sort of realized is that over the last few years, I think that RSU 5 community programs adult education has been really sort of a binary proposition for what we can do for adult learners. And when it comes to students at Freeport High School, they're either graduating from Freeport, or if all else fails, they withdraw and they come to us as high-set students for their equivalency. And we want to find some other ways to support them, and so that really is at the heart of this goal. A good example of another service that we're hoping to roll out and make available to Freeport High School students through our adult education outreach is the Summer Melt program. And so that is aimed at students who aren't necessarily on the dropout prevention watch list, but those are students who make it through high school. They have aspirations and intentions to attend college, but then somewhere between graduation in June and when they are supposed to report to college in August or September, maybe they lose a little bit of nerve, or maybe they've started making better money in the summertime, and that's, it's hard to walk away from a good paycheck. And the Summer Melt program is something that we're looking to introduce, where we would before graduation day, we would make some outreach to these students who might be good candidates for it. That could be we could have help identifying them with the counseling staff at the high school, and then just work with them and keep an eye on them and keep in touch with them over the summertime, so that they don't lose the edge on that aspiration to attend college in the fall. So we're excited about that as well. And the other goal set forth, and I alluded to this earlier, community programs will grow a multifaceted outdoor recreation program, through coronavirus relief funds. We've been very fortunate to have some money to spend recently, and my goodness, what a blast it's been working with people at L.O. Bean and other places, building an inventory of things that are really going to pay some benefits this winter right away, and into the future for both adults and for kids. And so I've made mention of it on the inside cover of the newest catalog, that we've got this stuff coming. And so we have a full fleet of adult and children's size snowshoes, cross-country skis and boots, fat tire bicycles, which they're basically mountain bikes. I don't know if any of you have ridden them. I've seen them and admired them, and haven't been on one before. But they have 4-inch wide tires, which means you can take them out in the snow, you can bring them on the beach. So it really just sort of extends the range and the times of year that we can use these things. We have gotten the green light to build a 9-hole disc golf course around the Freeport Middle School campus, which is, again, super exciting. We have the targets are coming, and we're going to be I'll be walking the grounds with Darren Carter, the phys ed teacher, on Friday, to start looking at where we might place these, the fairways and such. I have approached the town and town of Freeport, and it appears that they are interested in at least considering the possibility of letting us use some of the land that is a part of the Freeport Public Library, Freeport Community Library site, which would just give us some additional terrain and distance that we could build in there. So that is that's a really exciting development as well. And then in regard to cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, Chris Garrett, our recreation coordinator, has started some outreach to landowners, Freeport Conservation, the town of Freeport, Freeport Historical Society, in regard to Pettingill Farm, and looking to build a partnership with people who can help create and then maintain good cross-country ski trails in different pieces of land, beautiful pieces of land around the community. And so we're working with some community partners to make the best use out of this wonderful gift of equipment that we've been able to get through coronavirus relief funds. So yeah, so again, that's at the heart of this goal. And I have to confess that I'm with a little bit of trepidation, I submitted just 2 goals this year. We're really trying to find our new normal, and it's tough because everything we do, all of our salaries and everything else, depend on our revenues from programs, and it's been a slow start. While we did run a full series of summer camps and programs, they were significantly below typical capacity. So we had to hire the same staff for them, but had about half as many participants. And so we're looking to rebuild, and certainly this recreation equipment is going to be a boost in that area, and we look forward to seeing where that can bring us.
Jen.
Thank you, Peter. That's great. I've been just like digging into this. I love this when it comes in the mail. I didn't get it today. I have one suggestion that I sort of was thinking about as you were talking about the high school, especially now during the pandemic, with the guidance counselors being like so overwhelmed with just everything. One of the things I think that would be really helpful through community ed is some sort of parent classes based on like secondary education and how to navigate that. I mean, I've done it twice, and I still feel like I could really use some help. And I think that that's something that parents would really be interested in, because I don't think we can all, kids go to the guidance counselor and get some info, and then parents, Google stuff, and, and some people can pay to have a college counselor person. But I think that would just be a really interesting thing to offer, just to see if people So
supporting your college-seeking student, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I know that when I went into it the first time, you think it's like it was when you went to college, but it's not. And I think it would take some pressure off, the schools, because I do think that's sort of also it's sort of your own thing too as a family. So
right. That's a great idea.
Just a suggestion.
Thanks.
Maddie.
Thanks, Peter. I just became aware that there's a disc golf course at Durham. Is the idea to form some kind of a league?
I just became aware that there's a disc golf course in Durham. Yes. Yeah. So that is yes, that is a part of the plan. So the phys ed department at the middle school is really excited about this, and rightfully so. But yeah, the idea is that we would create some sort of league. For adults and for kids, and yeah, it could be a really neat thing.
Well, I can tell you in Austin, where I lived for 12 years, it's a really cool hipster young adult thing.
It's a lot of fun.
So we can always rope in more of those.
Yep.
I'm just curious about the coronavirus relief funding. Was that something that was part of what the school district got, or was that a totally separate kind of a grant?
So we've had the opportunity to get a little bit of money to reimburse us for the things that we used in the spring and for summer camps that were coronavirus specific. So the infrared thermometers and hand sanitizer and all that sort of stuff. So that was a smaller pot of money that we had access to earlier. But the funds that we're using for these recreation equipment purchases, that's coming from the CRF2. That was a part of the broader school district allocation.
Valley.
I just want to thank you so much for working on establishing partnerships with community groups to make excellent use of the money that you got from COVID relief. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those programs work, but I think it's a great idea what you're doing, so thank you.
Good, thank you. Yeah, it's so much more fun and exciting too when you find a sibling organization in the community that is just as excited about it as we are, and yeah, we're serving the same people. Oftentimes we have very much the same mission, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to do it together.
And it could just be the ones that came top of mind, but I would definitely encourage it in all 3 towns. I think all the ones we mentioned were here in Freeport, but I know there's a lot of landowners in Pownell and Durham that maintain trails and stuff like that. So
right, yeah. One of the things that we want to try to reestablish and we're thinking about skiing, snowshoeing, and mountain biking. My understanding is that there used to be a pretty well-used set of trails that went from the Pownell Elementary School up to the Bradbury Mountain State Park, and that at some point in recent years, I don't know if it's a new landowner or previous landowners just decided they didn't want folks using their property anymore, so those trails are no longer available. So we are looking through the Community Programs Advisory Committee that Jeremy is a part of. We're looking for some ways to do that kind of outreach in Pownell with individual landowners and finding safe ways to have programs for, again, kids and adults that would go from Pownell to Bradbury Mountain, and hopefully some similar things at Durham as well.
Beth.
I am aware of those changes, and I know that it's created a problem in more areas than that, but there's still a lot of, so that created a disconnect. So you can't really connect through, but I think you can still access most of the trails on either side of that.
Okay.
So I think there's still a lot of access, so definitely look into it.
All right, well, get your boots on, and we'll be having you lead the way.
I'll meet you there. It's great. It's a great place.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth.
Any other questions for Peter? Thank you.
Great, thanks everybody.
Okay. And our last administrator report for the evening is the capital improvement plan. Dennis Ouellette.
And Dennis is also going to do his goal review, and in your packet you should have, in your folder, I think Jenny placed his goal update in there.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start out with my 2019-20 goals. The first one is to ensure that all staff and students have quality facilities to meet their needs. How we accomplish this is we check the capital plans, we build the capital plans around our needs. We update our 5-year and our 20-year capital plan to make sure that things are getting repaired. Every year, both the 20-year capital plan and the 5-year capital plans get updated to include accurate life cycles of items listed in the plan, and that both plans change annually, of course. And once we make those changes and we do some repairs, we update the plans and move forward. We've also spent a lot of time prioritizing the 5-year plan to make sure that we're where we need to be. The second goal for 2019-2020 was to provide all students transportation that support participation in extracurricular and curricular programs. So to do this, we started off reviewing all the bus runs. We do that. I do that every year. We have a program from the state. It's a computer program. We've changed a few bus runs around last year to lighten some loads and make them a little heavier. Of course, bus runs look totally different right now, of course. There's not very many students on the buses any given day, although things are starting to pick up. We're exploring options to provide transportation for curricular. I'm still advertising for bus drivers. We have a plan to replace buses as we need them, and I'll get to that in a little bit. We have created a document. We added a midday pre-K run this year and a high school bus run that services MVR 10. And due to some scheduling differences, it's been quite a challenge, but we've managed to, with vans and buses, we've managed to meet the needs of all the students to go to MVR 10 every day. We created a document to track the age of the buses. I'm going to talk more about that in my capital plan. And we have a plan put together for a late bus from the Freeport Middle School to Pownell. We haven't put that into play yet. It was going to be in a van because it's really not a high need, although it could be. We do have a bus available to do that if we need to. It's finding the driver to drive it, but we do have a van, and we do have a person that can drive the van every day. So if there's 2 to 3 kids that need to go to Pownell on a late bus. We should be able to accomplish that, and we'll tweak it as we need to as we move forward. But I think that's a pretty good plan. I've talked it over with Ray, and we're pretty excited about getting that started. Well, any questions about 2019, 2020? Okay.
Quick question.
Okay.
Dennis, so you said that you're going to start the late bus when the extracurricular activities start at the middle school, or have they started yet, but there is no transportation now?
Mostly what it is, you know, we have a shuttle bus that does the extracurricular, the sports stuff and things like that. But what it is, when students want to stay after school for extra help or whatever, they need a way to get to Pownell after Pownell gets out of school later than we do. So they can stick around till 2:45 or 3 o'clock, and we can shoot them over to Pownell and get them on their regular buses to go home. And then they can take advantage of that time at the middle school to get stuff done that they need to get done. That's the plan.
Okay, so there hasn't been a need for that yet, is that
Not
right?
yet, but we're waiting to put that into play. We had a driver and a van lined up, and we still have the van, but the driver's doing something else right now. I'm looking at another van driver that's interested in driving, and hopefully we can bring them on board, and that will loosen up the load for that other van driver, and we can get that program started early. There really hasn't been much of a need for it yet.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, well, 2021 goals. Ensure that all staff and students have quality facilities again to meet their needs. As you know, we're working on the solar project right now to become more energy efficient and sustainable. So sometimes in January, we'd like to bring, you know, that document and have that clear cut of where we're going to be with that solar project. I talked to Revision Energy recently, and we're on a site. We're going to have a meeting next week to kick off the solar project. We won't be on the solar. We won't be generating solar energy till the summertime, but at least we're on a site now. We also have a goal to improve the ventilation at Moore Street School. We were right in the middle of a documentation of a ventilation study. We haven't finished that yet. We're still working on that. We're getting together with some plans to make some improvements there. And then an enrollment study needs to be done. We're going to do that over the winter of 2021. Becky and I have talked about that a little bit today, and we'll get those enrollment projections documented at some point. It seems like a big goal. And then the next goal, to conduct an energy audit. We're in the process of doing that now. We hired a qualified company to inspect and identify items that need to be improvement. We're still waiting for our document. I called them today and asked them about that. They said they'd get back to me this week on when we're going to have some kind of a document on our energy audit and where we're at with that. We'll review the audit with the Sustainability Committee and the board, and then we'll have a documentation of recommendations for the Finance Committee moving forward somewhere in February. And then we're going to develop and present recommendations for implementing and needing improvements to the board. We'll create a board, implement the upgrades, and we'll have a written plan for the upgrades. And that will be in May, probably, when we move forward with that. That's the goal. So, is there any questions for that piece?
Susanna.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I'm quite impressed that this past year that you've managed to figure out getting all the students to and from Brunswick.
Yeah, that was
So
quite a
that's-
challenge,
yeah.
actually, but
So congratulations.
thank you.
But I do have a question on one of the goals, and this is partly related to some feedback from a teacher that we received. And that's, you have the notice about the improving ventilation at Moore Street.
Right.
And I'm just wondering whether you can speak to the status of that. I know the ventilation was a question earlier in the summer and something that you've been investigating and doing some work on. And we had just one teacher who was commenting about wondering whether that air exchange has ever been tested or done.
It has. We spent a lot of Saturdays over the past summer and fall doing air quality tests and ventilation rates. I did that in conjunction with Mechanical Services, our person who does our preventative maintenance program. And we've hired an air balancer to come in and measure the rate of air exchange in each room. We've made some adjustments to the unit ventilators and the HV unit over there to make sure that we're bringing in an adequate amount of air as it was designed to do. I think we've met that goal. What we're looking to do next is probably automate the system so that it can do that automatically without having somebody to go in and tweak that every now and then. We'll have a better sustainability and we'll have a better system altogether. That's the goal, but yes, we've managed to get the ventilation rates up to over 20 kids per classroom.
Okay, yeah, that was I remembered you. Yeah.
Over that.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes.
I remember you talking about all the Saturdays and the effort involved. I just wanted to make sure that that was done and clarify the goal about improving the ventilation. So that's talking about the automation and the efficiency.
Right, that's what we're looking into now. We're going to probably do an request for proposal to see, and I'll talk about that in the capital plan a little bit, about getting some of those automated controls done and how we're going to do it. We have somewhat of a plan, but we don't know where we are until we figure out, we get a request for proposal out there and we know what that's all going to cost, because right now we just don't know. So we know that we have a good system and we know that it's working well and it's working as designed. So that's very important.
Excellent, thank you. And that's true across the buildings?
It's all the buildings.
Okay. That was
yes.
my impression. I just know that there are also a couple of notes about whether windows are closed in the winter, if that's if the ventilation system has
they'll make adjustments throughout when the weather gets a little colder to make sure, but that's why it's important to get some controls in there so that they can adjust automatically.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. I'll get right into the capital if you guys don't.
Maddie,
Just as a
if
follow-up
you wouldn't mind, just get a little closer to your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect.
Better? Wow, I can hear myself. A follow-up, not for you, Dennis, but thanks. Becky, we did hear from a lot of teachers in that survey about questions that, some questions that we've had answered here before, like the question about could we use HEPA filters or not. You know, we know that we can't because our systems can't support that, but teachers don't know that. And so similarly, questions about what testing has been happening in the schools. And we know teachers have anxiety about these things. It sounds like we just might need to make sure that we close that communication gap between what Dennis is reporting to us and what staff are hearing.
Yes, we've shared those documents.
Yeah.
So I think we could, when we had, I could ask Principal Nickerson about it, about just like resharing again, because it has been shared. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure who it is, but it wouldn't hurt to just reshare it again and just have her just say, oh, this came up on the survey, and I don't know, maybe the teacher missed it when she shared it, but happy to do that again.
And I think there's some opportunity there because, and what we heard originally and what Dennis is reiterating tonight is that some of those things are going to change as the weather changes, right? Like we have things wide open because we can, but we can't leave them open for the winter because it'll freeze the system. And so there will be adjustments that they're making. There are, there was a question about air filters in the rooms. I do think that was one of the things that we included in our CARES Act funding to try and get some air filters for rooms that need them. So, it could just be just an update of how it's evolving.
I was going to talk about the air filters from COVID, from the CRF funds. We actually bought air filters for every room in the district so that every room in the district will have an air filter or air purifier in the room. It's a pretty good upgrade. It does about 800 square feet, which is about the average size of a classroom. Actually, I was going to talk about capital, but I can mention a few things that we got through the CRF funding. It's pretty interesting. We ended up buying a lot of custodial equipment through the CRF fund so that they have new rug extraction cleaners, they have floor cleaners, they have dryers, they have wet and dry vacs, they have vacuum cleaners, scrubbers, and every school got some amount of new cleaning equipment to make their job easier. They have a hard job, and new vacuum cleaners. They're not searching around for a vacuum cleaner all the time. Not that they do, but so we got really strong equipment right now through those CRF funds, and that's starting to come in. We got some windows replaced at Moore Street School and the Freeport High School. We've got a John Deere mower, tractor, snow blower, sweeper for the outdoor class spaces so that we can keep those clean. That was a big plus. We got 11 water bottle fillers coming. So in place of a drinking fountain, you have those water bottle fillers like we have over there in the corner. They're much more hygienic. We have some doors that we replaced just because of movement. We wanted to be able to block off certain areas if we had to. We have 2 portable classrooms coming. We have heat pumps coming for the fitness area. It's not just heat pump, it's AC, so we'll be able to keep the air fresh in there. There's no windows in that area. We have some security card readers that we got. A couple sheds, a bunch of disinfecting products, wipes and paper towels and all kinds of things, the purifiers for the room. We actually got a maintenance van with shelves in it, so you won't be seeing a maintenance van or a maintenance truck on the capital budget for a few years, although we do have others that will probably need to be replaced at some point. And we got 2 other vans for use of community ed and nutrition to deliver food. We have a school bus that we got through the COVID funds, so I think we did pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Maddie, I interrupted you.
I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. There's going to be an air filter
Right.
in every single room,
Right.
like one of those standalone units?
Yep, there's small units.
That's super impressive. Thank you.
Yep, it's going to be nice. I'm going to get right into capital if you guys are ready.
Are you good, Jeremy? Your hand was up earlier. You're good?
I'm sorry, Jeremy, I didn't see you. Okay. All
Sorry,
right.
Dennis, I have one more question, sorry.
Okay.
This is Vali. The question was about the enrollment study.
Yes.
Are you guys contracting with
We-
expert in demographics to help you
Yep.
do that?
We're looking into that, actually. Rick had some knowledge about that. We talked about that today.
Okay.
I don't know that we've made any decisions yet, but maybe Becky.
We do not have any decisions, and I think the organization that Rick mentioned was one that I was familiar with, but I didn't realize that they had done a study for RSU 5 before. NASDAQ, I think you can go through them. But I think we'll just explore some options before making our decision.
But the idea, the exploration would be to work with demographer. We're
Yes,
not. We're not
yes,
trying to do that in house, right? That's my
I-
question.
I don't have the capacity to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I figured. Thank you.
Okay. So 2020-21 capital budget projects. This is the ones that we just completed. We do have a bus that we bought through the state funding program. That's on order right now. We used the bus that, for the COVID money, the COVID bus. It's coming next week.
We shouldn't call it the COVID bus.
Probably, yeah, bad choice of words, really. The bus that we purchased through the CRF funds will be here next week. The other bus, the state-funded bus, will be here probably in December.
Especially on the day that we just had 2 more cases, Dennis.
I'm sorry. That was a bad choice of words. That's what I call it in my office when nobody's looking, I guess. Kind of threw me there. In Durham, we're doing the last of the 10 heat pumps. We're doing the last 4. They're up and in. They are wiring them and hooking them up right now as we speak. Well, they're probably home now, but I mean, today I watched them. They were working on them as I was in there. We did their tennis court repairs. That's not the full-blown repair, but that's the repair that we said we would do over the summer. It came out pretty nice. It looks pretty good. It's hard to keep an outdoor court perfect over these winters that we have. Panel windows were replaced. Some people who took the tour with us saw them. They're very nice windows. They allow for a lot of airflow in the school. The central office, business office windows were replaced. They were pretty bad. They didn't lock well. They didn't close well. Now they're nice vinyl windows. They look good. And the split system, that's the heat pump AC unit in Pownell kitchen office, and it helps keep the kitchen cool as well. That's in and running, and I spoke with Stephanie over there, and she just is very comfortable working in the kitchen now. It's not like cooking her out anymore. So we have the one bus for replacement through the state on order. We haven't got that yet. But we do have the other bus coming, the one for the CRF funds. So in 21-22, the capital budget projects was mostly we originally had 2 buses on there. We did a bus study. We have 23 buses. Our oldest bus is a 2007. It's a 84 passenger flat nose bus number 25. That bus has to be in service for 15 years. It's 13 years old, and it has to have 245,000 miles on it before you can replace it, before the state will let you replace it. It doesn't have that many miles on it, and it's only 13 years old. So they're not going to let us replace that bus right now. The next oldest bus is a 2011, so that's 9 years old. So our fleet is pretty modern. It's pretty good shape. So I think in light of the fact that if you look at the 21-22 capital, FY22 capital budget projects, you'll see more street, school, heating controls. There's a number there. I'm not sure that number really meets the need. We're not going to know that until we get to the RFP. But we do have the mass landing roof, the entire building. That roof is at the end of its life cycle. We think that's $360,000 is a more realistic number than the $395, but we're going to go out to bid with that, so we'll have a big, strong number by the time we get ready to do it. But I'm pretty confident that we'll come in close to that number. It does appear to be over, but we have a plan to over the $400,000 that we typically allot to the capital budget, but we do have a plan to, we're not going to forgo buying the buses, and because we don't really, we have 23 buses, they're in great shape, and I don't think the state's going to allow us to replace any of those anyway. And we actually ended up with 3 new buses, if you think about it, this year. We have the natural gas bus. I mean, it's propane. I'm sorry, it's propane. We have the bus from the CRF funds, and we have the new bus coming from the state. So that's 3 new buses. So that really puts us in a good place. And our oldest bus, other than 25, is 9 years old. So, and we typically keep buses longer than 10 years, but we're trying to get to that 10-year point. But so we're going to forego getting a school bus or 2 this year coming up, and we have a plan. We went through it, and we're going to have some savings from the roof, and I think we're going to have about $55,000 worth of savings from this year as capital budget. So we might be able to do something in the spring to get this ball rolling if we get the RFP going. But we'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure, during the school year. And So that's kind of the plan to move ahead with that, but we need to get the RFP going before we can really come out with that solid figure. Mass Landing roof is needing repair. It's at the end of its life cycle. It needs to be done. And if you go to fiscal year 23 capital budget projects, you'll see the high school elevator upgrade, the Pownell steamer for the kitchen, the Mass Landing steam kettle for the kitchen, some parking space increase for middle school. And item 5 and 7 should really be closer together because, you know, we'll do the basketball court at the same time when the pavers are there. I noticed that the other day, and I didn't think to change it at the time. And a Moore Street upgrade, that's the oldest elevator that we have now, and it does need some upgrading. Mass Landing exterior doors, they're pretty rusty at some point. I think the people on the tour, I showed it to them. And middle school, I like to replace some of the siding, that hardy board siding on the additions. It's really not holding up the way it should be holding up. So that's the plan for 23. And of course, things can change. They often do in capital budget world. And then fiscal year 24, you have a bus in there. I wanted to re-side the portable building out here. It's been on site for quite a long time. We painted it. It looks decent, but it should be sided. And I'd like to add some siding to the new sports garage that the kids at NVR 10 built, just to preserve it. Durham field irrigation. I haven't really talked to Will about that. It's still a few years out, so but we had talked about it at one point. I'll make sure that, but when we get to that point, we're sure that that's something we want to do. The carpet in the auditorium, pave the back path at Moore Street School. I'm going to widen that out. I've talked to Julie about that. Pownell phone system, it's getting up there in age, and Moore Street phone system as well. We have new phone systems at the high school, the middle school, the central office, and middle school, right. So maintenance mower, we might not have that on here when we get to that. West Street's paved the playground area. The playground area is that little area just outside of the gym door. It's part of the playground. It's a little basketball court kind of thing there. It's not paving of course, the nice play area. Somebody asked me that the other day. What do you want to pave that for? I said, I don't want to pave that. And then the central office carpet, that's starting to get worn out a little bit. And then I'd like to start exploring some key card entries to get away from giving out keys to everyone to the buildings, and have a key card so that we can actually know who's in our building at any given time. It's the modern way to go, and I think we can build on that in the future. And have a nice control over our access to our buildings. And then fiscal year 25 would be the 25 would be the next year. I'm going to motorize the middle school bleachers, although I think I might be doing that with some of that CRF funds. I want to do a security upgrade to the security system at Pownell and the fire system at Moore Street School. Some door replacements at Moore Street School. We've done some. There's still some more to do. We've done the worst of them. We're keeping them up by painting them, but they're going to have to be done at some point. Heat controls at Moore Street, that'll definitely come out of there once we, this is 5 years out, you got to remember, so we don't, it's not really written in stone here. Pownell heating control upgrade, we've done some of that already. We added some units in the ceiling, and we're repairing a unit. Durham, we're going to have to replace the clock system. Those have a life cycle about 12 years, 12 to 15 years. Middle school, we want to do some more windows at the middle school in the rear of the building, and then some parking lot repairs in Durham. And then in FY26, it's a dump truck that we're gonna be looking for. We have a dump truck, we use it quite a lot when we're salting and sanding our parking lots. A mower with a cab and a snow blower, we're always looking to upgrade those. More key card controls, maybe at Moore Street and Pownell this time. Middle school outside doors, a grounds gator is a cart that you ride on to do when you're lining fields and you have to bring equipment out there to dig or whatever. You have a little unit that you drive out with all your equipment in it. We'd like to replace the millwork at the high school in the 100, 400, and 200 wings. That wasn't done during the renovation. Maybe we'll look at that and try to get some of that done. Some exterior doors in the 100 wing. If you go down the end of the 100 wing, those doors they've been around for a long time. They're pretty strong, but they're going to need to be changed. And then Mr. Grogan asked about an outside lunch pavilion, which seems to be pretty important right now. And I told him I would put it on here, and we can discuss that when the time comes. So that would be the 5-year capital plan as it's laid out right now. And again, this plan moves quite a lot, as you all know. This year's urgency becomes, 3 years urgency becomes this year's urgency. You never know. But we try to keep up with it pretty closely.
Jeremy.
Just kind of surprised to see, you figure in any capital plan you're going to see boilers or heating equipment. I'm impressed to see that it's that new, that we're in good shape in terms of boilers.
Well, we've done over the years. I think we've done all but one roof, Mass Landing, and we've done almost every boiler in this place. We've touched it, or we've changed sections, or upgraded burners, or done something. We replaced a boiler here, a whole boiler here. That was quite an exciting day. Yeah, we've done a lot of boiler work. A lot of the big stuff is done. We tackle that right off. I've been doing this for 20 years, and we've done a lot of the big lifting, the heavy lifting.
It's really impressive. Thank you so much for that planning on that. And just a very small thing, can you get the brakes fixed on Craig's Gator? They're very
You have to
squeaky.
slow down.
I was surprised it didn't say Sickles Gator on the.
He thinks it's his. He thinks it's his. I tell him it's not. We let him use it.
Valley.
Thank you, Dennis. This is
Yep.
a great plan, and I appreciate you mentioning that you keep it fluid and flexible.
Yeah. Well, you kind of
Probably when you have the report back from the audit, the energy audit, some things will be added to this. So it'll
Right.
be interesting to see how the plan shifts when you have the results.
Right, exactly. It's not just an energy audit either. It's an audit of all our systems. So it could be windows, it could be something, depending on what they find. It could be lighting, it could be anything.
Right.
But the energy audit piece is going to be pretty key. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay. 10, board comments, committee reports. We just wanted to put something on here for the report out from the MSMA conference, which was last Friday and Saturday. And I know we had quite a few people that were signed up. And so if anybody had any report out on any of their sessions they wanted to share, I'm going to start with a huge shout out for Maura as our delegate in the delegate assembly, which I don't even know how long it went. Midnight? I don't know. When did you get off the phone?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, actually, can I give an update on that? I was gonna raise my hand for that. It was 5 hours, which I think was the longest delegate assembly ever. We had some technical issues, but we persevered. And maybe you got an email today, or you should have all seen an email today with the updated resolutions. There were a couple of amendments. They did all pass. I voiced our concern about not having funds taken for distance learning from existing funds, and also our concern about the second one, building stronger family support. MSBA did express it was their intention that it was philosophical in nature, and we still thought that it was too vague, but it did still pass by the other delegates. The third one, equity in education, is the only one that did pass with amendments, and there were 2 of them. Another district amended it to add age and economic status, which I thought was a good idea, so I voted in favor of that for us. And then I proposed our amendment that Maine DOE offers support and funding for the purpose of equity in education. And there was a little bit of pushback, and it didn't seem like the funding piece was going to pass. Folks were concerned that that might supplant existing education funds, that it might be taken out of the existing funding formula. So I did drop that piece and just asked for the DOE offer of support, and it passed with just exactly 2/3. So we got that part in there, but not the funding piece. So I think it was a good idea to remove that. And then the last one passed without amendment. Was board meeting remote participation. Board meeting remote participation.
All right. Anyone else want to share any of the sessions they went to? I found the technology worked really well. From my perspective, I liked the fact that they the ones I had attended, they pre-taped the presentation, but they had the presenters online the whole time, so you could be communicating back and forth with them while they, while they were speaking on your TV, on your computer. You could be asking questions about what they were talking about in the chat, and they could be responding, which I thought was, for the ones I went to, I thought that was a nice feature. So, Maddie.
I'm not done going to the conference, so I'm grateful that we have more opportunity to do that. But I did prioritize the ones that I wanted to be in live, that I wanted to hear some live questions, and I had some notes which I forgot. That's what I forgot. But one thing I did want to mention, in the this came up in a couple different sessions around free speech and protection of free speech, and so I raised the question around the Confederate flag, just knowing we had grappled with that in policy recently and decided to put language in our handbooks. And the lawyer giving the presentation went a little further than our attorney did. When she met with us, she said, there was new case law. There were new examples in case law that would support this, but she said she wouldn't want to argue it in court necessarily. She didn't know which way it would go, but the guy who presented said he actually felt it would be riskier for districts not to have a policy about the Confederate flag, not a policy, but a stance. It would be risky for us not to make sure that that is perceived as hate speech than to ignore it. So I was grateful that that was brought up for the whole state to hear.
Thank you, Maddie. Susanna.
I don't want to speak directly to the conference sessions, but just to acknowledge that Maura was selected as the delegate from the district.
So not just the delegate, she's now on the MSBA board.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes,
sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Thank you, Susanna. Yes, and I will be happy to bring back any information that seems relevant to the board whenever my meeting is, whenever I join them.
All right. Unfinished business, board discussion on the staff survey. So obviously everyone got the raw data in our emails about a week ago, and in your packets there's a paper copy. And I think our agreement at last week's meeting was that folks would sort through the comments and the information from the survey, and come up with a couple of takeaways for the major themes that we were seeing. I think both positive and improvements, so that we could kind of narrow the focus in terms of looking for the administrative team to try and come back to us with some brainstorming around, those big topics that seem to percolate, throughout the district and all the schools. So I believe the green sheet in your folders. I know there was a document that was created yesterday just as a space for folks to put some of their notes down on terms of the themes, good news, challenges. And then I think in the solutions bucket, we had some folks who sort of put in solutions that came from the teachers, like their commentary, like how could we improve? That was one of the categories. And then I think we also had some other board members who were brainstorming their own solutions. So I think we got a sort of a mixed bag in that one. Yeah, so I will stop talking now and just open it up for a conversation. If anyone wants to share. In terms of notes, I didn't add mine to this document just because I had done mine by school and tally marks. That's what worked for me when I did it. So I didn't know how to convert that into this format. So just share verbally, I guess. Susanna.
Okay, so I went ahead and color coded mine with different colors for different themes that I was picking up. And I think the overarching, I picked up sort of the key themes for me, but I think the overarching one that we spoke a little bit with Ray about earlier was the burnout, the exhaustion, it's only October, how am I going to keep going? And I know I had mentioned over the summer when we were talking about the hybrid plan skeleton about a 4-day model, and there were quite a few people who felt, both on the board and in the schools, who felt that the 5-day was necessary for reasons, and that's fine. I was just wondering, are there other districts that have been doing, and other schools in our district that have been doing a 5-day model? Do we know?
Are you asking not
so
in
we're
our cohort?
Either in our schools around, how many do we have some feeler about schools that are doing 5 days a week, hybrid model, so that it's sort of the 2-3?
Cynthia, I know you were going to we felt like we were going to have that for next time, and we were going to reach out to the cohorts, because it's easy, that's what we usually use for salaries and things like that. So we will have that for next time. I don't know of anybody in our cohort that's doing our exact model. I do believe that what I know about, it's not, I know when I read the data, for some teachers, I think they believe that it's a 4-day-a-week model, and the teachers are given like the 5th day for planning, or maybe working with small groups, and it's really all over the place. So I'll try to have that, if that's a request from the board to consider that again, then we would have that data for you to kind of see that.
Thank you.
I don't know of anybody that's doing the Monday, Wednesday, every other Friday.
Okay.
But we do, we've got districts that are just going 5 days a week that I had mentioned before, with Lake Region and Lisbon and things like that. And then there's, maybe I'll even try to get it to you guys ahead of time, because it's just really, it's all over the board.
Right, thank you.
And I guess I'd give the most unique one to Brunswick. And so I'd be happy to provide the board with that if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
And I think for me, it's not so much the 5-day week or not, it's the schools that are balancing the synchronous and asynchronous in class. So that the hybrid model, doing a hybrid model 5 days a week. And I'm just curious about how, if we can know, and if other districts, other schools in our cohort or elsewhere are doing it and feeling that from the staff perspective it's going well, if there's anything we can be learning from them to implement. Just because I'm getting a sense not only from teachers saying that they don't have the planning time, and from, you know, Ray, who said that certainly there was a level of underestimation about how much time the teachers would need to be putting into their prep, and the exhaustion, burnout that we're hearing about, but the sort of quality over quantity question with teachers are saying, you know, I'm getting to my classes, but I'm not able to give my students what I want to be giving them. And just wondering, how much are we actually getting out of those extra 2 days a month, given that it's not always 2 days a month? How much are we getting that we wouldn't be getting if teachers felt they had more time to connect with students and were better prepared for lessons? So I'm just wondering where that balance is. And I realize that there are childcare issues and other questions involved. I'm just wondering if we can investigate that balance. Thank you.
Maura.
I think that balance was one of my key takeaways that I had as well when I was looking at this. I specifically circled a comment that we got, I'll just read it, that said, "For me, kids come first as they are the reason we are here, but kids can't be successful without healthy, positive, functioning teachers and adults leading the way at school. The balance between supporting our students and supporting our teachers and staff is what's keeping us up at night." I wish I had a solution to this. And it's just important that that the board knows that we are in this dichotomy right now. I don't know, I feel like we're in a lot of dichotomies right now, the balance between being back at school and being safe, the balance between, you know, the kids come first, and that is why we're all here doing this work as a board, as a district. But I agree that, you know, I think someone used that analogy of the oxygen mask and putting it on yourself before you put it on other people, which is something as a parent I can really relate to. And I think we've all had times where we put the needs of others ahead of our own. And I do worry about our teachers with some of the comments in here about burnout and things like that. So when I was reading them, the number one thing I think I took away was that we need to give them some sort of reprieve and figure out what that is, while still maintaining this balance between, you know, putting the kids first, but thinking about everything that's going on in the classroom and what our teachers are struggling with, and our staff as well.
Maddie.
I want to better understand what our process is here and the intention. And I'm one of the people that put my ideas in that document. I thought that was what it was for, because my hope was that if we all did that, we could use this time now to, instead of sort of going all over the place, because there's so much to react to in this document, we could, as a board, determine what our real priorities are, so that Becky and Cynthia can go away with a very clear, prioritized sort of list of the things that we would like them to come back and discuss with us next time, because if we're sort of all over the place, we might not accomplish much at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the idea of people sharing, you know, the two major themes they pulled, I think we'll find, well, two, three. I mean, I think if you had to boil it down to, you know, 2 or 3 things, I think you probably get to the crux of most of the comments, I think. But yeah.
So I appreciate what Maddie's asking, because so I know I'm the one that asked you in the board update to also put out some things you'd like us to consider, but I hope we can prioritize those, because, you know, I think that, I guess that's what I would love the majority of the time spent on, because I agree with you, Michelle, that you know, the theme of like burnout came through, the theme of, you know, would like more planning time. You know, there's some themes that come out of there, and I would love for you guys to have the discussion of, can you agree on a few things that you'd like the administrators to go back and explore and think about, right? So if, you know, as a group, and it might need to have like straw votes or something, because if as a group you really want us to look at the 4-day-a-week model, then we'll go back and have that discussion and explore what, as I said, there's a variety of 4-day-a-week models out there. It's not like it's 4 days and then the 5th day they have planning. It's all over the place. There are districts that are there and they're looking at trying to come back for a 5th day. So, but if that's something you want us to explore, then we would go and look at, you know, what those models are, and then come back with whether we recommend one of those models and the pros and cons of that. And so if there's 3 or 4 things that as a board you can decide you'd like us to explore, I think that's very doable between now and the next board meeting. If we end up with 20, it's going to become overwhelming. And I know that I asked for it. So thank you.
At least you appreciate that you asked for it. Vali.
Thank you. I think, I mean, just trying to zoom into the things that we all have read over and over. The planning time is the issue that bubbles up the most. Interestingly though, the solutions offered by teachers at different levels are different. For example, the elementary school teachers would be happy just to have fewer goals with TC, with everyday math, and have the PLC time and have the PD days to focus on planning and working with the colleagues. At the middle and high school, you see repeatedly teachers asking for that 5th day to be a planning day. However, we're a district, so we need to come up with a solution that works for teachers in all of the span of the grades. I mean, even at Pownell, they're working on a 5-day week, so we say you're not longer in the green, everybody moves to a 4-day week. They don't really need that extra day because they're on a regular schedule. So whatever it is, it needs to alleviate the workload for teachers, but it may not be one size fits all for everyone. So I would rather the administrators look for solutions, trying to find extra time within the allotted slots that we now have for PLC development and all that, to try to accommodate more planning time and not making a sudden switch to a completely different schedule that may work for some and not others. And this would include even just taking the professional learning, development days in some schools, chop that up and just have planning time in 2-hour blocks every week, or creative solutions to using the time that's already on the calendar, but try to devote it as much as possible to planning and less to new learning on how to teach differently.
Candy.
I would agree, obviously, and I put mine in here, but the planning time was the biggest thing that came up. In addition, I mean, along with that, all the stress and whatnot, but the planning time was the biggest thing that came up. And I would not like to see us put out the possibility of the 4-day with the extra planning day. I mean, even just listening to Ray earlier about what he said about how much more planning there is. He said more than double the planning for the teachers. So I think that, I mean, we've seen lots of suggestions in here for ways to look at planning time, and I think that it may not be able to be the same over the board, but to ask the administrators to look at that and what would work best for their schools, but not to throw out the idea of going to the 1 day of planning.
Jen, are you good?
It was kind of just, Vali and Candy both said it, but I agree with the fact that if we kind of come up with the sort of themes that we, obviously planning time, we've talked about that, but then put it back to the administrators. And the reason why I think that is also a great idea is the feedback from the survey of the support that the teachers feel from their administrators was one of the really big things about what's going well, or just a comment. So I feel like we should use that to our advantage and ask the administrators to, not to do another thing, but, to kind of see what would fit best for their own school.
Lindsay.
I agree with everything they've said. Obviously, the one that stuck out for me was mental health, no surprise. And I think we could actually do a lot to help their mental health by really being mindful and thoughtful about their planning. And I think if they knew, I too would not be opposed to very seriously considering a 4-day school week, if that worked, or a 4-day hybrid with a day for planning, because I think that's a win-win. I think we'd give them their planning time. I think we'd give them their mental health. And when you give people their mental health, you give them physical health. It builds your immune system. And as we head into the winter and what's been predicted to, be kind of a dark time, and we've been under 8 months of chronic stress. I think that considering that, and honestly hearing Ray in his own words, I wrote it down, more than twice what they were prepping for before. I mean, that's outrageous. Like, we need them, and our kids need them. And so I think if we can be really mindful, thoughtful, open-minded, yes. Would there be pushback from parents? Yes, but they're gonna we have no subs. Subs are gonna get harder and harder as the surge goes and as winter comes on, I would imagine. So I think, and the other thing that stood out for me was just please nothing new this year. Like, I liked hearing their goals of, like, Ray's goals were so great because he was like we just kind of need to survive. So as far as PLD, like, I just don't think this is the year to be strategizing about new methodology, unless it's technology. But I would just say that if we can give them some planning, we will be supporting their mental health, which in turn supports immune systems and our students. So, thank you.
Beth.
I agree with what's been said already for the most part. I did put in a few things on this paper, and it was just occurring to me. I did make the suggestion, about the possibility of switching to the 4-day schedule with a 1-day remote, only because I do have a friend that's a teacher that is in a district that has that schedule, and she's constantly just praising it. Like, she's like, it saves me this day because I get to connect. I have IEP meetings, or I have, time to look for that kid that wasn't there, or, I don't know all the details, but I mean, it just literally, she was feeling like this is such a stressful time and it's so intense in so many ways that to have that 1 day, I think there was even one comment about giving teachers time to breathe, and so to me, it was just thinking about that. And so what I kind of came around to was some of the positive themes was the smaller class size in the hybrid right now. Everybody that, in the positives was saying that it's less stressful, it's better socio-emotional for the kids in these really small class sizes. They're feeling like there's better instruction and support. So, I mean, to me, and fewer student discipline issues. And so to me, thinking about that and having the smaller class size in the hybrid model, to me, equals better connections, better learning, better behavior, and, easier to follow safety practices if everybody, in this hybrid model is, following their distancing as much as they can and things like that. So I I realize that Pownell is green, but I also feel like in our district, we have some that are at the yellow plus, and then we have a school that's at green. And so I'm just wondering if, you know, that sort of schedule could also be modified a little bit, you know, without making it too crazy for families. I'm not trying to propose some craziness, but it's just a thought around keeping things, you know, if they're going well where they are, and how to, like, that it might actually be better learning in these smaller, you know, class sizes. So again, the whole idea of quality versus quantity, sometimes it stands out for me. So that was all I wanted to say.
Susanna.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to add on the mental health, because I think there's, you know, one thing about nobody's realizing what a toll this is taking on the staff. And, you know, we put on a happy face because we have to. And, you know, so hearing that, and that's, I mean, that was one from one quote, but, you know, this is recurrent, and that's what I've heard. And from hearing from other teachers in other districts, having that, you know, that sort of safety net. And it also sort of helps maybe with student mental health too. When you have students who aren't showing up in synchronous classes or needing to follow up with some students, it gives that time to do that. And that time, teachers are saying that they don't have that time right now to check in with people as much as they feel they need. And they're not there for the students, and they know the students are struggling. So, and I also just wanted to tie that in also to comment was made as in here about what's going well, about feeling that the administration in the school principals are, I think it was one about one of the principals being a rock or a, and hearing that, and the tying between that, but also there were comments about how the information that we are getting from the principals can be overly optimistic or overly positive, and that, you know, this survey was sort of an opportunity for teachers to tell us directly how things were going when they weren't going as well, and maybe offer some of that feedback. And so I would just be really interested in, you know, doing another one of these, just to keep in another, I don't know, after winter break, or so at some point, just to keep that dialogue going. So that's sort of a different point at the end, but yeah, just with the student mental health as well. So.
Liam.
I guess I'll add my comment to that too. It was kind of interesting because I had two teachers make comments alone today that they needed more time to plan. They wanted more time to plan ahead. And I think for every single teacher that I've, every teacher that I have has made some sort of comment about wanting more planning time. One of my classes, we also now have this strange Friday model where we do, the teacher uses it to plan ahead, and we get an assignment essentially on that day that we do. But I also, I know this isn't directly related to only teachers, but if you look at students too, especially right now when we're moving into more synchronous classes, I do think it'll be important that teachers can check in with students on a day like a Friday. But I also think, I mean, you get some Zoom fatigue after a while if you're in front of Zoom classes for 5 days, all synchronous classes. And I think that would also potentially help the student mental health, but I think it would also help teachers really with that planning aspect of things.
Maddie. So
my question before was a process question, so now this is my distillation of my 3 themes. And the first being that planning prep time, but I want to bring it back to what I was asking Ray before. I think when we call it planning prep time, we think that's just a teacher alone with a book planning a lesson. And I think we see in the comments that it's way more than that. It's the opportunity to check in with a student that they haven't checked in with. It's an opportunity to check in with a family that has a lot of questions about how remote instruction is going. You know, it may be an opportunity to do a little more instruction where necessary. It's that connecting with kids piece. And you know, I really felt that in the comments. The teachers are asking for that. They're not just saying, my hair's on fire, I need time to do my job. They're saying, I need time to do my job well, and thoughtfully given what's going on in the world. So that's theme number one. Theme number two, I'm referring to it as social emotional wellness, because we've spent years budgeting and uplifting our students through our focus on social and emotional wellness. And if we cannot do the same for our staff, then we're shortchanging our students as well, and we're sending the wrong message around valuing our staff. And then number three, I'm calling it pressure or slow down. I'm concerned, and I think I'm partly at fault here, but that some of the ideas we talk about, and synchronous learning is clearly one of these, there's something that gets lost in translation. We have something that we think is a good idea that we would like to see implemented, and somewhere in the middle it becomes a goal that's being rushed into faster than I think maybe we anticipate will become a problem. I just would like to see us always be more thoughtful and slow and make more meaningful change.
Jen.
In listening to what everyone said, what I pulled out from what the board is saying, I feel like it would be appropriate to do a straw poll for the 4-day. It seems like everyone is interested in looking at that, because I haven't heard any other way to do that. So I don't know if that's something we could do now, just because I also feel like we could continue.
Past it, yep. I mean, the other thing I heard that helps, the idea of time, and I like Maddie's broadening of not just prep or planning time, but just time in general. Time to do their job, time to prepare for their job, time to meet with kids, time to grade papers and get it into Power School. Like just all the things that go into what they're doing beyond, being in front of the Zoom. So, one of the ideas that I think Valley raised that I think I had written as well is the idea of loosening the reins on the other time we have allocated for them, whether it's, staff meetings, whether it's early release days, PLD days, PLC time, make it less structured and more, use it where you need it. In the idea that we're probably not going to push forward any big initiatives this year. And I think we as a board need to acknowledge that and tell Becky and Cynthia that that's okay, right? Because we layer big goals on everybody because we have high aspirations for everyone in this district. But if we're going to say that, we're not expecting the level of attainment that we would have expected 12 months ago because of the world we're in, then we need to acknowledge that and adjust accordingly for everyone. But I just sort of a sidebar. But Valley.
Yeah, and it's not just about how much time we give. I mean, that is definitely very, very central to the issue that we're discussing. But it's also how many demands we put on them. For example, there were quite a few comments about getting pushed into synchronous. And I have to say that our 9th grader came from school today and said, my teacher said that on November 19th, everyone's going synchronous at the high school. And I thought, whoa, I'm not sure that's what we wanted necessarily. We wanted to explore and incrementally and gradually move towards synchronous, but I think there may be a little bit of misinterpretation about the speed, the rate, and just the volume of people who need to go into a certain teaching model at a certain time, that time being right around the corner. So I think that puts people on edge, obviously, and not surprisingly. So some of the changes that we can make too is just be a little more methodical about how we move in one direction or another. And I think I'm realizing that we also need to give people more choice. As a parent, I have to say, a 4-day week would be extremely difficult. So even though in an ideal world, I would say yes, that 5th day should go to the teachers for planning, I'm also aware of mental health in homes or parents who have jobs and they'll have to scramble and get coverage for that 5th day. And I'm also aware of kids who are working independently at home for 2 or 3 days a week and how difficult that is for a lot of the students. We talk about summer melt. I think we're seeing long break melt. I mean, the students who are in group A and went to school today, they won't be back to school until next Monday. And that happens frequently. Those 4 days slow down that rhythm that teachers are talking about too and trying to get their stride. So it's not as easy as let's just allocate this extra day for this one thing because there's so many competing needs for that time on that day. So I'm not saying rule out the 4-day week, but I'm thinking do consider all of the ramifications of devoting that one day for one thing, given that there's so many other needs too. So to the extent that we can provide relief without making any drastic changes, that would be my preference. Obviously, if after trying some of the less, drastic changes, we're still faced with the same problem, then we can consider all options. But I would rather go a little more slowly than just make such a big switch. And I mean, I'm sorry to have to say this because I really, really would love to give that 5th day to the teachers. But like I said, from my perspective, slower may be better.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm not seeing throughout here a groundswell of support for the 4-day. It seems to be keep coming back to not enough planning time because of all the, like we're talking about these expectations. I mean, there certainly are instances of asking for the 4-day in here, but I'm just not seeing that throughout as a theme, if you will. But I have not counted each line tallied for that topic. So I do wonder. There was a suggestion for a half day on Friday, which would then be equal for both cohorts, something like that. But also realistically, does a Friday afternoon really become a productive time for planning? Not at my work. Sorry, boss. But so I'm just not sure. But at the same time, I think we really should focus on stepping back from some of those very important but maybe goals that aren't realistic for this year in order to give the teachers some planning time, which they clearly desperately need. I'm out there. So thank you.
Lindsay?
I was gonna agree with Vali that my other, aside from the mental health, it was the theme that jumped out was not changing plans on them quickly. So while I too would dearly love to give them a day, you're right, there's mental health of families. I mean, this thing is so huge, but so I think not changing plans so quickly. I think one place I really felt for them as I read this, and a lot of them did mention that 4th day, or the 5th day. I mean, it's in a lot of comments, that our fellow cohort schools they have in some capacity. But the changing of plans, like I feel like we didn't even really know, kind of hybrid plus, like I didn't know that, and I'm not trying to teach or plan or lesson plan or accommodate new kids in my classroom with CDC guidance. So, I mean, it's just an impossible situation, whether it's staff meetings that are just planning time or I don't know. But that was my other one. And I just wanted to agree with Vali that kind of course correcting, where I really felt for them, I'm not sure I articulated it, was we never allowed them to get into a rhythm before we started changing it on them and changing it in a big way. And I know why we did, because of the bigger scope of kids who had summer melt or don't have great, support at home or whatever it is. So I fully comprehend it. I supported it. I raised my hand. But as I read through these comments, I really felt for them that there's no way for them to get their feet under them and establish a rhythm before we change. And there's always the threat of what's going to happen with our color coding. I don't have any great answers.
Susanna.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think what I mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, about switching to a 4-day, because it was mentioned quite a bit, but also school, investigating whether schools who are doing a 5-day in some capacity similar to ours, how they're coping with, is planning, I assume it's a problem, how are they coping with it? And what can we learn from, those districts, if there are ones that have models similar to ours? And then, talking with districts who are doing 4-day models and how are they coping with some of the issues that we identify, I think would be, I do myself support the 4-day, but I want to know, I'm aware of those problems with it, and I'd like to just have some more information from other schools who tested it out, because I think the communications was something that was mentioned quite a bit, and Vali and Lindsay just touched on that, but we don't want to be trying something and then a month later try something else. So what can we be learning from other districts? I would really like to pursue that. Thank you.
Okay. So the idea of, just a general sense of folks that would be in favor of considering a 4-day week, so Cynthia and Becky have an idea of, does this have most of the support, and this is likely, something that we're going to want a lot of information on, or not. So, so if you're in favor of, really considering that switch from 5 to 4 days.
So I have a question about that question.
Mm-hmm.
So do we support it now? Do we rule it out now? Do we support it? I'm not sure about timeline, because I'm not against it, but it wouldn't be the first option I would support. So how do I vote?
Yeah,
so in the future, what we try that's a little less invasive doesn't work, then yes, absolutely. Would I try that as the first option? No. How do I vote?
I would say that's a no vote. Right, because I'm not sure. Okay, let's start with, is anybody diametrically opposed to considering a 4-day? Like, there's no way you'd ever get behind it. Okay. So now we're kind of in, do we look at it as a sooner option, or is it, I don't want to say last resort option, but it is more impactful to the district as a whole, particularly when we try and think about what does it look like for Pownell when they're in green, and there's a lot of other impacts.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So I just want to make you aware, so I'm happy to gather the information if you want to hear from the cohort, but before you do that, I'm assuming that's a straw vote. I just want you to know that's more than Pownell Elementary. We have kids with disabilities in all of our buildings that are now coming back to programming 5 days a week. We have grades at Durham Community School that I would say half the grades in Durham at the pre-K to 5 level. That's 5 days a week. All of our pre-Ks are currently 5 days a week and have been since the beginning of the year. And so I just want to really make you aware of the ramifications when you want us to just kind of go down that road, right? Because I think that, I don't know if it was Lindsay who said, I'm not sure I fully understood what I was voting for when I was voting for hybrid plus, or somebody said something about that like earlier, or switching. So I just want you to have an informed vote.
Maddie.
So I agree that if we, go back and forth, that's just as stressful. I'm frustrated that I didn't stick to my guns this summer when I really wanted us to be on a 4-day model, and I don't remember how I got talked out of it so quickly, but I wish I'd stuck there. what I might like us to consider as an alternative would be to take a step back to hybrid, away from hybrid plus. I wonder if that might accomplish some of what we're looking for.
I'm not sure it does, though, because I think, you know, what we're seeing about the need for time are the folks that are trying to navigate the remote and the in-class, right? So that's the hybrid piece. So when if you take away hybrid plus, I mean, that's essentially the 5-day-a-week kids, where you've brought them back to a more typical instruction model, right? I mean, although they may still have some kids that are hybrid, not all of them are back, but I don't know. I certainly recognize I appreciate the intent, but I'm not sure that would accomplish it.
And I just want to remind you that when we were in hybrid, we had kids back 5 days a week. Oh, okay, all right. So, I guess I'm wondering, Maddie, what you think we're accomplishing by going back from hybrid plus to hybrid.
I'm thinking of the pace of change, and just that, you know, that just, you know, where teachers had a certain number of kids in a class and they'd gotten a handle on who they were and how to help them, and then all of a sudden, you know, there are more kids, and then the next week there are more kids, and I'm wondering if that's a way to help slow the pace of change.
Okay. So I think it would be important for you guys to kind of hear from principals the way they went towards that before you're making like decisions like that or thinking about that, because at the high school we really have brought not that many kids back, so there hasn't been, I think there hasn't been that dramatic change from that. I think the stress that you're hearing at that level is, you know, for some teachers, they're not as comfortable using technology as some other teachers, and so I think you are hearing from some of the teachers who were resistant to the synchronous learning and maybe are afraid of it or just didn't feel like they had the training that maybe they needed. That is, you know, our move to synchronous learning is based upon the parent survey that we did, that we heard feedback from the community and the board that, you know, we need to do, and the kids, about, you know, there's not enough connections with teachers. And so, and you heard Jen talk about that we've had, you know, more teachers that have very willingly done that. And the problem with going at the pace of, well, do it when you're comfortable, is that we have some kids that it's still resulting at the high school level and at the middle school. I think that was another place that when we coded that survey, that was an issue. So we've reacted to the feedback that you've given us around that. The problem with doing it at your own pace is that we have kids, for no fault of their own, happen to just land in the teachers' classrooms where none of those teachers are comfortable, right? And we've heard that from parents, like, my kids are not getting any synchronous learning. So that's why, you know, there's been the encouragement or push towards that, because we did start, as you heard, in September with piloting and letting the people who were most comfortable go first and letting other people get under their, get more comfortable and get into the routine before we're trying to do that. And so, and then at the younger levels, at the pre-K to 5, principals have worked very closely with teachers before adding more kids to the room. They've been very thoughtful with establishing the criteria and making sure that people are comfortable with, do you feel like you can take a couple more kids? We did not make a magical number of saying we're going to now go to moving to 14 kids in every classroom. It was really based upon the principals working with those teachers. And so I guess that's my concern to we've just told families your child can come back 5 days a week for at least 6 weeks. And so for us to think about saying, no, we're going to go back to a hybrid, and what that means for some classrooms is that, there's 3 kids in there, or 4 kids, or 5 kids. Like at, Pownell, we might have a class of 10. And for somebody else, hybrid, or the half the class at the beginning of the year, that's 10. And they're very comfortable with 10. So we've tried to be really thoughtful about not a number where the teacher is not comfortable with it. That's been collaborative with the principal and the teacher.
Dwight.
I like the way Susanna started us out, which was we have some experience now, and we perhaps can benefit from taking a new look at how we're using our time, knowing that time is at a premium. I don't hear anybody saying, I want to go to a 4-day and that's the solution. What I'm hearing is we need to explore as many options as possible and be as flexible across the district as possible. And I want to go back to the other observation that Beth made, I think, and Ray talked about. It's not just planning time. It's time that you can spend communicating with and making relationships. And relationships with kids right now is really difficult. And I know from colleagues I've spoken with as well, that is one of the biggest challenges, and that's how they use that time, not just for planning. So perhaps we throw it back to Becky and the administrators and say, look, we're willing to take as many things off the table as we possibly can. We're willing as a board to be as flexible as we can. We'd like to consider as many options as make sense. But we know this has to be implemented by administrators and teachers. You know where we're coming from. Could you do some brainstorming, but take an honest look at that 4-day option as a way to approach this?
Jen.
I just have a question about, so Becky, if there's a classroom in Pownell that's back to like 100%, right? Like all the kids are coming. So that teacher, is sort of back to normal, right? Not doing remote, or is that, I'm asking that just to get a clarification on like what
Right.
it might look like being a different teacher in a different school.
Yes, so at Pownell, anybody who's, we've got kids at the remote, but they're in the remote option.
Program, right.
And so everyone at Pownell is back to 5 days a week with no synchronous learning. And remember that I know the elementary principals are working on the red plan and doing some tweaking. Cynthia and I just met with them this week in case, we all see the cases surging, so the chance of us being in red at some point is just real. So we're trying to currently at pre-K to 5, no one is doing synchronous learning, right? But they're doing the hybrid. So we've got classes that are totally back green, and so those teachers are not doing any synchronous learning.
I think that's then that speaks to my point of, I think it's very difficult to put a one-size-fits-all, because a teacher in Pownell who's back to normal, and I do not mean normal, I just mean has all their kids in the class, isn't doing synchronous, and I compare it to a high school teacher who's teaching, you know, AP courses and honors courses synchronously all day. And I think that that's a very different need. Those teachers have very different needs. So I think that that's probably, you know, to go with what Dwight said, to go back and just really see what it looks like at the different schools, what would alleviate. You know, a teacher in Pownell is not going to alleviate one of the teachers at Freeport High School.
Right. I think the common theme is time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very happy to go back to the administrators, especially, I guess I would also need to know, as we go back and look at the goals for the year and how to create that time, you know, is there any goal that's still sacred to the board? Because, I mean, that's...
I think the goal where we've expended money for an audit probably is one that we wouldn't push off the plate at this point, but I could be wrong. Beth.
That was literally what I was going to say. Well, not exactly, but yes, I was going to say I didn't know if that's when Maddie was saying what she was thinking, backing off all the goals. I was like, well, maybe she doesn't mean that one. So yeah, okay, I agree.
Thank you for the clarification.
Lally.
But also, I mean, the goals that each school has, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. If one school can afford to continue with some goals while providing the necessary relief first, then I wouldn't necessarily say don't work on your goals if you can. Obviously, there's some schools where all the time needs to go to planning time, but other schools where teachers may have a little more flexibility and they may even want to have something to strive for. So I'm completely in agreement with giving feedback to the administrators, principals, and saying, we would like for you to bring back ideas on how to provide extra planning time and time in general to your teachers. And we understand that that won't be the same for every school. And the one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, because we've talked about the teachers and the parents, the kids. I mean, we need to do what's best for kids. So if a kid needs to be in school for 5 days a week because otherwise they're just not connecting remotely with a teacher, or they don't have anyone at home supporting them, then that's a real need. And I would not be comfortable denying that child that opportunity to be in school more often than not. At the same time, that's not the case for everyone. So to the extent that they can just look at teachers, parents, and kids first and come back with ideas of what benefits the kids most while taking into consideration the needs of all the stakeholders, that's what I would like to see ideally. And I know it's super messy, but that's the best I can say right now.
And the other feedback I might provide is, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting a little bit, was, you know, our understanding specifically around what does synchronous look like, right? Because I mean, you know, the idea of change and time and, you know, the pressure for synchronous learning, I think some of that has to do with just not knowing, you know, maybe their expectation or their understanding is it's you're on the whole time, right? And we heard 3 very different models that Ray just laid out, right? So how are we communicating that to teachers? And, you know, how can we set sort of a continuum or a spectrum depending on the class, depending on what the content is for the day? You know, while we may expect synchronous learning at the high school level, because that's that's what we feel is the most beneficial. It doesn't have to be this. It could be, sort of an a la carte menu of it, right? I understand not saying don't do it till you feel ready, because we could end up with kids that by the luck of the draw don't have any. So, there is a minimum expectation that you'll check in, you'll do the mini lesson, and we need to provide them with the support to do that, right? So if it's the only PLD we're going to require you to come to is around synchronous technology, right? We're going to give you tools to be better at that. That seems fair, right? Otherwise, it's your time to plan. I saw a couple of different times we had in the good column was the tech integrator at the middle school level. Seems to be working really well for a lot of different teachers. I know it's a hard position to find, but I don't know, how can we share him with the high school teachers that are struggling? Maybe it's not every teacher needs his help, but maybe a few of them do, that are really, really raising their hand saying, geez, I don't know how to do this. So, I think trying to set sort of consistent understanding of what it looks like, but making sure people understand there's flexibility in that, right? It's not, blocks that have to be filled. I know flexibility is hard, because then you end up with, change in days and all those things, but flexibility where we can to provide them with the space they need, but, within the confines that we have to live within for, the parents and the kids.
And I know that training is, or those messages are going out. I know that I was at the middle school this week, and Ray and I went into 5 very different classrooms that ranged from, exactly what you're describing, Michelle, from the, here's the mini lesson, and now, I saw the teacher say, okay, does everybody understand what they're doing? And she was in the class, and the class started working, and then she tuned in to the kids that were at home on the computer. And then, I was in a classroom where it was just really, how are you doing? It was a check-in, and then kids were off on their own. And then I was in another one where it was just more direct, it was longer and more direct instruction. And Liam, I don't know whether there's been a variety in your synchronous classrooms.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, I guess. I do have the majority being AP classes, so it's not quite the standard model, I would say, but yeah, some teachers do check in, but the majority of my classes, because we really have a defined agenda that we have to get through, they're lessons, they're full lessons, and we take notes during those lessons. But other classes do have other models. In the AP world, we discuss a big part of the class. We really communicate current events, etc. And I've also heard of other teachers just doing short check-ins, and I know that my AP Environmental Science teacher, she's looking into just doing check-ins on Fridays with us now.
At the high school, I was able to observe an art class with Charlie Andreessen, and he has basically figured out how to have the kids at home working on their art so that he can see them and give them feedback. But most of the class is really, the kid at home, doing their art, and then, he's kind of checking in. So I know that, well, I would never say I know with 100%, right, as based upon, even the ventilation at Moore Street, but I know that the message has gone out to teachers that there's a variety of ways of doing this, and I think, the next step really is identifying the ones who are still uncomfortable with it and letting them go and visit some of those other classrooms, or getting the tech integrator up there, or providing some kind of training.
Dwight.
Becky, could you develop a continuum of we could give up all staff meetings, and that would do so much for us. But I want to get, I don't want to go away from the consideration of a 4-day option. And so I want to make sure that that's part of a continuum that we're looking at, what the benefits are and what the potential costs are to parents, et cetera. So it's a broad look.
So do you feel like you have, I mean, based on the conversation, based on the document, based on obviously you read the same feedback we read, you know, the concept of time, the concept of, you know, social emotional wellness, which I think those two things do, as Lindsay said, go hand in hand. And, you know, and then that idea around the synchronous learning and what does it look like and how do we help boost people up in that? Did anybody else have a big idea that we haven't mentioned? Yeah, Mara.
Oops, it is on. So I think it was clear that all those things that you said and that we've discussed, and that the planning and having more planning time would address a lot of the comments that we saw in this survey. But I did also feel like there were that there are other ways or other things we could explore that would address burnout or somehow allow teachers a reprieve. And I've gone back and forth in my thinking about this one. But I know we got a handful of comments about it in this survey, but have also heard from a number of teachers in a letter. And that is just about the ability for our teachers to safely see their loved ones over the holidays. And I really do feel as a board, you know, and as a district, that we should be discouraging people from gathering, but I know we have teachers who haven't seen their loved ones because they're high risk for the whole school year. And I think to the extent that we can offer them the ability to do that, that might really be a positive thing for their mental health and for their burnout, to know that they will have that break and be able to safely see their loved ones. Now, I know that's not true for everyone. I know not everyone celebrates Christmas, but I do feel like the New Year break, like I'm extremely concerned about, you know, the safety of our schools and folks gathering anyway, whether it's families or whether it's teachers, and then coming back and bringing COVID into the schools. So I guess I would just put that out, you know, to the board. I know we're going to have additional snow days. I'm worried about changing anything in our calendar because I know families have planned to have their children in school the days that they do. You know, perhaps we could explore figuring out ways to creatively provide childcare. But I'm worried about people coming back, going to gatherings and coming back from winter break, and the risk of that, and then also the benefits of it. If we could allow more time for staff or students to get tested so that they could safely do that. Thanks.
Jen.
Oh, I never turned my mic off. Maura, are you speaking to the letter that the board got about the days? I just guess I don't know how that we would do that. Like, what does that look like?
Should I just elaborate? I don't want to talk back and forth. You want to recognize me? Okay, this is Maura again. So I don't know the best way to bring that forward without speaking to the content of the letter, but I will say my concern is different from a letter that we received with concerns from teachers around more time around the holidays. So what I would specifically suggest we could consider is more time just specifically around winter break, not around multiple different holidays, but maybe more time before and after winter break, like 2 days at the beginning and 2 days at the end, or something, or a day, something like that. And I think that hopefully we'll get days back if we can have remote snow days that could offset that, because I know there's concerns about losing instructional time. And again, I'm worried about changing anything for families. I'm concerned about addressing that, and if we could provide support and still offer like fun community program activities or something. But I'm really worried that as with cases escalating and going into winter, that this is a big risk for our schools as well. And I just don't want us to not think about that possibility.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, you know, the way I look at that, I think that an 11-day break does provide sufficient time for people to go through the process of getting tested, traveling, coming back. You know, I don't know how long people will travel for if they do travel. But I guess I'm unclear on how adding days limits our risk. I think it, I'm just not sure how it would protect us on the back end, right? Because that's the risk, right, when they come back from the holiday. But definitely, you know, obviously we heard from those teachers with the request. So, Maddie.
And maybe I misunderstood it. I thought the request was for days on, I don't know if it was on either side or just going into it, of the break, not being additional days of break, but of remote instruction as a way to kind of kill two birds with one stone, give some flexibility to teachers who may wish to, or staff who may wish to travel and prepare for travel safely, and also test the remote model, provided we're not in it already.
Beth.
I can understand Maura's concern, certainly. I just don't know how we would guarantee that people would actually take the steps that they're supposed to take, given the extra days even. That would be my biggest concern, is that people, you know, they're going to do what they want to do. And, you know, generally most of us seem to want to do the right thing. So, but I just also know that there's varying levels of gatherings right now. And, you know, some people are being very cautious still, and some people are, you know, more gathering and doing different things. And so I think that the people that are gathering and doing those bigger things aren't the people that are going to be like super cautious about getting tested before they come back either. So I just don't know how we would, you know, manage that, or even ask people to get tested or anything. So.
Becky.
So I would also, in the spirit of what you just gave me directions on about quit piling stuff on, I want to make you aware that this was a request by the high school staff, and although I also know you've received the feedback that, you know, they feel like they're being pushed into synchronous learning, they're prepared. I mean, to give them whatever 2 days or whatever the request is, that would be an easy transition for them, because they've been pushed into synchronous learning. So they're all doing it, right? Our pre-K to 5 staff are not prepared. That would be what you just told me to stop doing, to quickly shift and say, now you've got to do this. They are not, we don't have the machines ready. And so if you said to me tonight, we want you to give the teachers, we want you to communicate to our parents that the 2 days before Thanksgiving are going to be remote learning, that would be a huge lift for our pre-K to 5 teachers to be ready for that. And I don't think I really was fully aware of that when I even brought the memo to you. at the last board meeting, but my elementary principals quickly made me aware that you know, if it snowed tomorrow, that we're not ready to do that.
Okay. Oh, Jen.
And I guess, Becky, what you just explained goes back to the not one size fits all. And I think that that's hard. And I'm wondering if there's a way to, I mean, is there a way to look at each sort of school differently? I mean, I mean, it seems like there's, I just don't know how it's going to work if we aren't able to kind of meet the needs of each school, which might mean something different for each school.
Well, I think when it comes to the bigger picture of what you're talking about from the survey, it may be, you know, when we're establishing time or something like that, that may look a little different depending on whether it's pre-K to 5 or 6 to 12. I don't know, I'd need to brainstorm around that. But with the issue of the request from the high school, I think I would struggle to do that for one level and not another. I mean, that just, I don't know, maybe I haven't thought about it enough, but it just seems like right now I can't see my way through that.
Okay, so do you have the direction that you need from us?
Yes, I'm going to go back and work with the administrators to look at a way to provide more time for staff, and that you're fine with us stepping back from our other goals other than the equity goal, and that you would like a I feel like I'm already, this is a good precursor to the budget, because I feel like it's like the 3-tiered system that I sometimes bring you. And so I'll bring you a continuum of, this is what we're recommending, and this is the menu, as Dwight put it, of things that we considered.
Is the board comfortable with that? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Did anybody join us on Zoom?
No, we have no Zoom attendees.
Okay. So I don't believe we have anyone in the public. Anyone out there, Cynthia? No? Okay. So then I would take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Susanna. Beth, all those in favor? None opposed. Thanks. Good night.